because we mightn't have actually drank together, but when you say an alcoholic, I know enough, you know? I know you experienced terror, frustration, bewilderment, and despair. I know you put a drink to your lips as the tears rolled down your face and you drank it anyway. And for goodness sake, at the end of my drinking, I drank against my own will. I know that because you tell me an alcoholic, and I know that because I'm an alcoholic. And as Phil was saying there, usually I'm in my car. It's funny, he said 2 years ago, well, I have a little daughter. I know she's 4 years of age now. I know what you're thinking. I don't look old enough to have a 4-year-old daughter. You don't have to check your cameras. There's nothing wrong with it. But 2 years ago, she was 2 years of age and she was a big time Zoom bomber. So I was often in my car. And in fact, the guy said to me, Paul, you've been sober for a while and you're back living in your car, you know? And I said, yeah, but it's a better car, you know? But I'm in the back room here tonight and she's not Zoom bombing. It's still a bit like a proof of life hostage video. But we do what we can do, you know, and so it's good to be here. And as I said, there, you know, we're talking about this feeling of connection in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I mean, alcoholism, I believe, is a disease of disconnection. My disease operates from the neck up. It wants me talking to me about me, and that's a conversation I can't have. That's a conversation that doesn't end well for a guy like me. And that's when I love to come on to Alcoholics Anonymous and meet with fellow alcoholics. There's no strangers here. We're all in this thing together, you know. James Joyce has got a line from one of his books, and he's talking about Dublin, but it's so indicative of Alcoholics Anonymous. He says, here comes everybody. Look around, we're all here. Gender, color, creed, it doesn't matter. And Phil was saying there about when all the meetings closed here in New York, and I have a disease that doesn't want me in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. This disease of mine wants me. There's a line in the big book in chapter 4 of We Agnostics, and it talks about, you know, the old theory of the flat earth, right? People used to believe we lived on a flat earth. Well, in some respects, AA is a flat earth. If you go to the edge of Alcoholics Anonymous, you go off. And the thing about going to the edge of Alcoholics Anonymous, it's a drift, almost a glacial drift, and you don't realize you're going till you're gone. And by the time you get to the edge of Alcoholics Anonymous, if there's any signposts, they're in a language you don't speak anymore and the language you don't understand anymore. I said earlier on, my disease speaks the language of my head. Thank God that is not the language of Alcoholics Anonymous. The language of Alcoholics Anonymous is the language of the heart. And this whole program, fellowship, steps, and everything is designed for me to drag me down out of here where the big show is always going on, to drag me down out of this head of mine, down into my heart where the good stuff is happening. And that's what happens in the language of the heart. It's one alcoholic talking with another alcoholic to remove feelings of differentness, separateness, uniqueness. I am you, you are me. There's a lady in New York there just passed away a few weeks ago, the first African-American woman to get sober in AA, Liz B. She was 69 years sober last month when she died. She would have had 70 years in July. And she would always say, without you, there's no me. And that is so true. Even in this Zoom platform, if I'm doing AA alone, I'm not doing Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm doing something, but it's not AA, you know. There's a friend of mine who says it's BB. I said, what's BB? He says, I don't know, but it's not AA, you know. And it's hard telling jokes on Zoom. It's like telling jokes in the graveyard at midnight. You're not really sure if anybody's laughing, you know. And I often think there are the guys who were in last week. There are a couple of guys from Ireland, dear friends of mine. And we did a little AA. Colette was saying they're going to do the same in August. We did a little AA pilgrimage. We went where Bill Wilson got sober in 182 Clinton Street on Brooklyn Heights. And then we went up into Manhattan to where he got sober in Towns Hospital. It's not a hospital today. You know, it's offices and apartment buildings. But I often think about that building where Bill Wilson got sober. And it says in the doctor's opinion, it says, he requested the privilege of speaking with the other patients. Now, here's a guy who's only sober a matter of days, We didn't have steps, we didn't have literature, but we had each other. And even before he left that hospital, he requested the privilege of speaking with another alcoholic. He went into the 12 steps, but he was trying to practice the principles of the 12th step. And isn't that so true in our lives? If I'm not trying to practice in some way the 12th step of Alcoholics Anonymous, what am I doing here? I'm working an 11-step program. An 11-step program for a guy like me is nothing more than a self-help program. It's a highly evolved self-help program, but it's all about me. That 12th step gets me out of me trying to talk with another alcoholic. I hope I never talk to an alcoholic. I hope I never talk at an alcoholic. And I hope I never get up in the spiritual hilltop and talk down to an alcoholic. And that's what Bill was doing. If you read his story, for 6 months, he ran around New York and he didn't get one person sober. And he went home to his wife, Lois, and he said, I thought I was on the right track. And she stood back. What's the old saying? When you're inside the jar, you can't read the label. And she says, Bill, you're still sober. Oh, that's right. And he went back to Towns Hospital, and Dr. Silkworth, not an alcoholic, but thank God for him. He says to Bill, you're up on the spiritual hilltop. You're going around the patients trying to shove that spiritual experience you had. Why don't you talk about the 1-2 punch that puts every alcoholic on the ropes? The mental obsession that gets them drinking, and the physical allergy that keeps them drinking. It's not the truth. I've got a body that won't let me drink, and a mind won't let me stop. And Bill Wilson realized my method was right, trying to talk with another alcoholic, but my delivery was all wrong. I'm up on the spiritual hilltop. And like we were chatting before the meeting, when he went to see Dr. Bob, he didn't talk to him. He didn't talk at him. He didn't talk down to him. He said to Bill, and Dr. Bob was only going to talk to him for 15 minutes. He was so hungover, his 15-year-old son had to drive the car. And Dr. Bob sat down with Bill Wilson. And Bill said to him the 2 questions. Did you ever feel drinking, like drinking when you didn't want to drink? Yesterday. Did you ever start drinking and you couldn't stop? Yesterday. And the 2 men talked with each other, not for 15 minutes or 30 minutes, for 5 hours. And Alcoholics Anonymous was born. And we were in Akron last week at Founders Day. And it's so true. The guy says, you can trace this moment in time back to that moment in time. I'm so glad. I mean, I'll be honest with you guys. I never took sobriety for granted. I was always grateful to be sober, but I took AA for granted. Like it was always here, like it was like oxygen. And then you hang around AA and you realize, I feel so blessed to be born in a time and a place that is Alcoholics Anonymous. Because for guys and gals like us, there's not a glossary of options. It's jails, it's institutions, or it's graveyards. And it's been my experience, by the time you're actually graveyard dead with this disease, you've been dead mentally and spiritually and emotionally for years. And anybody who mattered in your life is long, long gone. Because that's what we do to people. We squeeze and we squeeze till they're like, go away and drink, or go away and don't drink, but you got to go. So it's so good to be born in a time and a place that is Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm so glad the traditions were read out there, the spiritual string that holds this package together. Because, you know, I'm a great believer, if A ever goes down, it won't be from the outside in, it'll be from the inside out, because we lose our way. We lose our primary purpose. We lose what God has asked us to do. And what has God asked me to do? All that my higher powers ever asked me to do in AA is to stay sober and try to help another alcoholic achieve sobriety. He didn't ask me to find a cure for cancer or just can you stay sober and try to help another alcoholic achieve sobriety? And I'm glad the word try is in there. And in doing that simple thing, which I dropped the ball many times, but by trying to do that simple thing, I've been so grossly overpaid in AA, it's embarrassing. And I've been paid, and I'm not here to sell AA tonight. If you're new here tonight, I'm here to sell AA. AA sells itself. But I'll tell you this, and I don't mean cash and prizes. You cannot get where I'm sitting tonight from where I came from without Alcoholics Anonymous. You just can't. It's an impossible journey. And why do I continue to come to AA? I wouldn't have drank if I hadn't come here tonight. I'm here because to see someone else walking in this door, even a virtual door, and be here tonight. We talk about the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. The hardest step in AA is the doorstep. And that's what I want to say now, that reach out and help that new person out of the darkness, over the doorstep, into the light of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it even says in the literature, why do we have meetings? It's not for me to come and complain, to show the new person our way of life. That's why we have these meetings, to show the new person, the new guy or gal, our way of life. That there's one problem, alcoholism, and there's one solution, the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. So the things that, I mean, Oscar Wilde, another Irish writer, he used to say he knew the price of everything and the value of nothing. And Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me the things of real value. So if you're new here tonight, I know down in Texas, a little bit south of Tennessee, they have a saying down there, come all the way in and sit all the way down. And that's what I want to say to anybody who's new. I'm a great believer that Alcoholics Anonymous, without the newcomer, it's just a room full of noise. It makes no sense to me. The whole program and fellowship is predicated on helping the next alcoholic. Bill went looking for Bob. They went looking for Bill D, etc., etc. That chain. That's what Bill, when Bill had that vision in the hospital, he thought of a chain. I think it was such a metaphor, a chain of drunks. And that's what I ask myself on a daily basis. How strong is my link in the chain? Is it strong to the people who went ahead of me? And more importantly, is it strong to the people coming behind me? If someone says to me tonight, can I comprehend the word Serenity? Can I know peace? Absolutely. Walk this journey with us, you know? So that's what I want to say to anybody who's new. I know we throw the word miracle around a lot in AA, but I don't think it's ubiquitous. What is a miracle? The definition I like the best is a complete reversal or upheaval of the laws of nature. It's in my nature to be lying on a Saturday night drunk somewhere, and I'm not. Now, how did that happen? It didn't happen because of me. It happened because of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you're new here tonight, I want to offer that to you. There's a miracle here with your name on it. Nobody can take it for you, and nobody can take it from you. Come into Alcoholics Anonymous and start to live the life that your higher power always wanted you to live before drink took you down a different road. George Eliot says, it's never too late to live the life you're meant to live. And that's been my experience in Alcoholics Anonymous. It is the only place I know in the world that you get the opportunity to live two lives in one lifetime. You hear people say, oh, I came to AA and I got my life back. I don't want my life back. It sucked. I had it for 30 years. I could do nothing with it. I got a whole brand new life in Alcoholics Anonymous. Are there people from the drinking days? Yes, but things are different today. My world is built on concrete. Where were we before? There's a great line in the movie Days of Wine and Roses, and Jack Lemming says to Lee Remick, we were lost on a sea of booze. And that's what I was. And every once in a while, I'd wash up in dry land. You know, our alcoholic, great starters, get things going again. But everything was always built on sand. And the first drink would always arrive more debris than the last time. Because of Alcoholics Anonymous, my world today, I don't know tomorrow, is built on concrete. And just like the story I used to read that little girl when she was younger, the world out there, because some days of spiritual warfare, the world out there will huff and it will puff. But if I stay close to the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, my sober house won't blow down. So if you're new here tonight, we need you. I'm a great believer that Alcoholics Anonymous is like a backwater pond. It needs fresh water. We don't get that fresh water, AA becomes stagnant, and nothing grows in stagnant water. We all die. So if you're new here tonight, as I said, come into Alcoholics Anonymous, We need these new people. Now, myself here, my own personal story, I don't know why I'm an alcoholic. To tell you the truth, I don't care tonight. Our book says that we cannot answer the riddle. Was I born in I really don't know. But I tell you what I do know. I believe I was alcoholic from the first drink. Some people say they're a boy. I don't know. I mean, I believe you got to drink alcohol to be an alcoholic. And I believe I was alcoholic from the first drink. As a young kid back in Northern Ireland, just outside of Belfast, and I walked into this bar with a couple of guys, and you've heard the different metaphors. I took that drink, I walked into that bar, just shy of my 16th birthday, had a stone in the shoe, knot in the stomach. You know, my skin just didn't seem to fit. And I took that drink, and it was like my life went from black and white to color in one drink. You know, most people drink because what alcohol does to them. Our book talks about it, a sense of conviviality. Talk about normal drinkers or even heavy drinkers, you know, social lubricant and so forth. Not me. I drink because what alcohol does for me. Alcohol does something for me that it doesn't do for a normal or even a heavy drinker. One drink changes how I feel about me, you, and this. And my life went from black and white to color. And the problem was, I was like Dorothy. All of a sudden, I'm not in Kansas anymore. I'm in the Wizard of, I'm in Oz. The only problem is when I woke up the next morning, I'm back in Kansas. And I don't like Kansas. Nothing against Kansas. I mean, black and white Kansas. And I would spend the next 15 years trying to live in a made-up, technicolored world with a drink in both hands. But I realized today it wasn't a real world. It was a fantasy world. It didn't exist. Half drunk, trying to live in midair. You know, my life fell apart. I've heard people tell different stories. Some people had a modicum of success and then they crossed the invisible line. Some people were very successful. That is not my story. I started drinking at 15. Within 3 months, I'm getting my stomach pumped out in the local hospital on a school night. And they told my parents, it's a good job you brought him here. He probably would have died of alcoholic poisoning. Before I'm out of my teens, I'm a daily drinker. Before I'm out of my teens, I'm taking morning drink. And my life got worse and it got worse and it got worse. But here's the thing. I'm an alcoholic. I don't want to look in. I'm always looking for an outside fix for what's really an inside job. And I'm blaming Northern Ireland. This is during the Troubles, like a low-level civil war going on over there. I was a working-class Catholic from the wrong side of the tracks and a big chip on my shoulder. In fact, when I got to AA, a guy says to me, you know something? You're a well-balanced guy. I says, finally, somebody that knows what's going on around here. He said, yeah, you got a chip on both shoulders. Hated everything, hated everybody. So I'm blaming Northern Ireland. I can't get a break. It's no coincidence I was sitting in America with an Irish accent. I was a runner, a long-distance runner, looking for that outside fix for the inside job. I was later to find out in Alcoholics Anonymous that every time I ran away from life, I was the guy firing the starting pistol, you know? So my life's fallen apart in short order in Northern Ireland, but I took myself, it'll be different. And I remember sitting down, and some of the guys have heard me tell this before. I said, you know, our alcoholics are, we're such grandstanders. I said to my father, I'm about 20, 21 years of age. I said to my dad, sit down. I got some bad news for you. He says, what is it? I said, I'm going to America and don't try to talk me out of it. He says, talk you out of it, I'll help you pack. on you go, Columbus. You know what I mean? Let me give you some folly advice. Turn left at Greenland, you know? They couldn't wait to see the back of me. So I arrived in New York here, but the first thing I unpacked out of the case was me and my alcoholism. And to make matters worse, we live in Rockaway Beach here, New York. I don't know if you know Rockaway Beach. I know Colette knows it. Now Francie knows it. Rockaway Beach, it's a big Irish-American neighborhood. You know, people will say, even who are not in AA, they'll go, oh, Rockaway Beach, the Irish Riviera. We know it better in AA as cirrhosis by the sea. There's more alcoholics per square fucking in Rockaway Beach. I was on a Zoom meeting one night, and there was a woman from Oregon, and she says, "I'm from Rockaway Beach, Oregon. We're famous for inventing the corn dog. What is Rockaway? What is Rockaway Beach, New York, famous for?" I said, "We're famous for falling asleep drunk on the beach and waking up with only one side of your face all red and having to go back the next day and get the other side sunburnt, you know." She didn't think it was very funny. But anyway, so I end up getting a job as a bartender here in Rockaway Beach. Now, I was the worst bartender in the worst bar in Rockaway. Now, there's some stiff competition. I worked in a bar. You all look like nice people. I worked in a bar that had a bouncer on the door, but he was there to throw people into the bar, not throw them out of the bar. You know what I mean? Like, you know the sort of a bar. If you want to see a full set of teeth, you need 32 customers. You know, this is a sort of high-end place we're talking about. You know, but water finds its own level, and so do alcoholics. I'm in this bar. It's actually quite pathetic. I worked in this bar from 6 at night to 4 in the morning. And I could literally walk behind the stick at 5:45 at night and pour myself a drink. At the end of my drink, and I couldn't even get there. Fears, phobias, hang-ups. What's the old saying in AA? Booze give me the wings to fly, and then it took away the sky. The herbaceous creditor. It boomerangs on us all eventually. By the time I'm 25, I hit my first hospital. I collapsed in a bar in an alcoholic seizure, and it wouldn't be my last trip to that hospital. By the time I'm 27, I'm trying to stop drinking. I could stop, but I couldn't stay stopped. I would do all the things that talk about in chapter 3. I'll stop for this and I'll stop for that. And I'll put X's on calendars. And I'll stop for Lent and I'll get back in shape. All the things they say, all these cosmetic changes. I would drink again. And that's why I want to say to AA and anybody who's new here tonight, you know what Alcoholics Anonymous give me that I can never repay them for? They've given me something between me and the first drink tonight. You hear people saying, "Hey, oh, you're just an arm's length away from a drink." I suppose technically that is true. But right here, right now, because of Alcoholics Anonymous, I am not an arm's length away from a drink. I am 12 steps away from a drink. And that's a long way from when I first walked in. But don't get me wrong. They're not 12 steps up to anything. There are 12 steps down to humility. I seen people drink again in AA that I thought would never drink again. I'm not taking inventory, but that tells me, and I hope I never forget, I get a daily reprieve, not a lifetime pardon. On the day that I think I'm staying sober, that I've got this in my back pocket, is the day I'm getting ready to get drunk again. But right here, right now, because of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm sitting 12 steps away from a drink. Tomorrow's none of my business, but right here, and that's what I want to offer to anybody, free. I'm sitting here tonight, free. I mean, Francie and those guys were on there. At the end of my drinking, alcohol had become the common denominator in my life. Every decision I made was divided through drink at least once. Even the most mundane things, going from here to the corner. Will there be enough booze to get me there? Will there be enough when I get there? And will there be enough to get me back here? And when you live your life under those parameters, as we do, your life gets smaller and smaller with less people in it. The end of my drinking, it was like drinking round the clock, totally alone, against my own will. Now, it mightn't seem like much. My 3 friends came in last week, and we jumped in a car in New York, and we drove 430 miles to Ohio and back again. There's absolutely, you'd been easier asking me in August of 1992 to go to the moon when I was an active alcoholic as to get as far as Ohio and back. But because of the freedom, as a friend of mine says, it's like that advertisement. Now you're sober, you're free to move around the country and the world. I can go anywhere in this world today because I'm a sober. As long as I remember, I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have the freedom to go anywhere, meet anybody. I see those three guys who were with me last week. They met more people at Founders Day than you could. Like, unbelievable. Because the freedom that AA gives you. At the end of my drinking, I was sitting in an apartment talking to myself and answering myself, totally out of my mind on drink. Not that way today. So if you're new here today, another one of the promises, the freedom that Alcoholics Anonymous gives you. The chains of alcohol are taken off, and the freedom that you get. There's an old saying in AA, and it sounds like a bumper sticker. How free do you want to be? I want to be free. Alcohol opened the gates of hell and let me out, and I don't want to go back in again. And I don't have to go back in again because of these people on this program. I'll just fast forward to the end of my story. At the end of my drinking, and here's the ironic thing. The last 3 years of my drinking, I was trying to stop drinking. But I go from drunk to drunk, and I bust out on this drunk, and borrow drinking as a memory. Use a line from The Godfather. I go to the mattresses, just lock myself in the apartment, day and the night and the day. You know how it is. I never went to Skid Row, but I brought Skid Row to me. And I'm sitting on this drunk. I've been drinking for 10 or 12 days. I couldn't tell you how long. And a piece of paper came under my door. I love when someone's telling their story and it goes down and it goes down, and they say the most spiritual words in an AA qualification, and then. There's not a person here tonight with 24 hours who hasn't had a then moment. And this is mine. This piece of paper come under the door. I thought it was an eviction notice. And I picked up this piece of paper, and it said what I've been hearing since I was 15. Paul, you're a nice guy, but you drink too much. These men might be able to help you. And there was a man's telephone number. Now, it's strange enough, a piece of paper coming under your door. I'll tell you, the stranger thing is, I called the number because I'm Irish, stoic, don't tell nobody nothing. I built these walls high and I built them deep. You weren't getting in, but I wasn't getting out. And I called this guy, complete stranger, and he had been primed that I might call. He was from the old South Bronx group here in New York. And that group had a mantra: we don't give up on anybody. And him and another guy called Johnny K, Jerry C, Johnny K. One guy was a subway conductor in New York. The other guy was a commercial removals guy. Just two regular guys. But like our book says, they were armed with the facts about themselves. And he says, hold on tight, we're coming over to your apartment. And they came to my apartment. This is August of 1992. And I thought they were going to talk about my drinking, because the few people left in my life that summer, that's all they wanted to talk about. Hey, Paul, we need to talk about your drinking. And I've been hearing that since I was a kid. Girlfriends, family members, soccer coaches, school teachers, youth club leaders have been trying to talk to me about my drinking, in one ear, out the other. It makes perfect sense to me now that God would use alcoholics to get other alcoholics sober. I don't know about you guys, but I listen to nobody. But I'll listen to another alcoholic. And the funny thing is, these guys came out of my apartment, and I thought they were going to talk about my drinking. And they sat down. They didn't mention my drinking. They talked about their drinking. And they told story after story, just like Bill Wilson with Dr. Bob, told story after story of their drinking. And I felt to myself, these guys seem to know more about me than I do. It's like they've been following me around for the last 3 years. And then the magic happened. Our most prized possession, identification. They talked about them, and I found out about me. And just like that classic scene of the man in the bed, I put my head in my hands and I coughed up the big fur ball. The worst kept secret in Rockaway Beach. I can't stop drinking. I don't know what's wrong with me. The last time I drank so much, I collapsed in a seizure that put me in a restraining sheet in the local hospital. I was drinking the same day as I got out of the hospital. What the hell's wrong with me? It makes no sense what I'm doing. I'm not stupid. And the guy put his arm around me. I could cry thinking about it. He says, Paul, you're an alcoholic and we're going to get you to Alcoholics Anonymous. And about 36 hours later, I got bookended into a car and got brought to my first meeting of AA about 2 miles from where I'm sitting here tonight. The group is not in existence anymore. It was a casualty of Hurricane Sandy. The Fort Tilden group. Now, I know this doesn't happen to everybody, but I walked in that meeting one way and I walked out another way. I don't know what was said at that meeting that night. I couldn't tell you who spoke, who didn't speak. I couldn't tell you. But I left that meeting that night and I had this little feeling inside my stomach. I didn't know what it was that night either, but I know tonight what it was. It was hope. I believe that's what Alcoholics Anonymous is. It's hope in human form. People get people sober. God works through people. And the conduit that he uses to spread his love and grace is the fellowship of AA. That's been my experience. I haven't seen God at a meeting yet, but I'm looking into the face of God right now in every one of these squares. And that's not a sales pitch. That's the God's honest truth. And there's people on here tonight I've never seen before in my life, but I'm looking into the face of God, but I'm looking into the face of another alcoholic. I believe that. And I would like to tell you in the last few minutes that I took the ball and scored a touchdown, but I didn't. I come into AA, our book talks about let go absolutely of all your old ideas. I come into AA with a lot of old ideas. Barroom mentality that might serve you well at 2 o'clock in the morning, some gin mill, but was not helping me in here. And I'm here to tell you, you can fool them at the coffee pot at 7:30. I've done it. How's it going, Paul? Oh, it's going great. You know when untreated alcoholism would come to visit me? 2 o'clock in the morning, lying there awake. Could-haves, should-haves, would-haves, guilt, shame, remorse. And every night, about 3 o'clock in the morning, there'd be this book that would appear on my bedside table. And it wasn't a big book. The book was called Where I Should Be in My Life by Now by Paul McQ. You start reading that book at 3 o'clock in the morning with no drink and no program, you're right up a rope over the rafters. Now, I'm a great believer in the 3 parts of the triangle. I believe in your very first meeting, you can do all 3 parts of the triangle. Unity. We do together what I can't do alone. Many meetings make it easy, few make it hard, none make it impossible. Right now, if you're new, you're part of the we, you're not I anymore. You're only I if you want to be, because now you're part of the we. Service. Find some way of doing service in AA. I used to say when we were new, put away one more chair than one you sat on. You're doing service in AA. It keeps you tethered to AA. It keeps you connected. Recovery. Maybe if you're new here tonight, the 12 steps seem like a foreign concept. We have slogans. Easy does it. Live and let live. One day at a time. They were like the banisters to the steps. I didn't hear that. People were talking about it. What does Chuck Chamberlain say? You'll eventually hear what you came here to hear, and you'll eventually see what you came here to see, but you have to have eyes to see and ears to hear. And I was a closed circuit. I wasn't drinking, but I wasn't doing the things I just spoke about. And a guy came up to me one night at a meeting, and he wasn't my sponsor, the sponsor name only. And he says to me, Paul, can I talk to you? I says, you're dying. And you're dying right in the middle of AA. He said, you know what you're like? You're like a starving man at a spiritual banquet. There's all this food on offer, and you're living on bread and water. That's exactly what I was doing. There's some people tell a story, and they would say it's a religious story. It's really a spiritual story. And it's the story of the prodigal son. And we're all prodigal sons and prodigal daughters. And you know how the story goes? The guy gets his inheritance, and he goes off to a foreign land, burns his life to the ground. He's homeless, he's got nothing left, and he decides to go back to his father. And his father hears that he's still alive, and he thought his son was dead. He's so happy, he rejoices and throws a big party for his son. My son's back. I thought he was dead, he's still alive. I read that story many times to a guy pointed out to me. It never actually says if he goes into the house. It says he comes up to the house. It never actually says if the son goes in. If you're new here tonight, why you're here, that's between you and your higher power. But I will tell you, if you're here, there's a miracle here with your name on it. Don't do what I did. Come all the way in. Sit all the way down. Partake of everything that's at the banquet. Your higher power wants to give you an abundance. Don't sell yourself short like I did, settling for crumbs on the table. Pull up a chair. You've been called to the banquet. If you're here tonight, partake of everything that's on offer. I didn't hear that. There was people talking about it, but I didn't hear it. And eventually at Alcoholics Anonymous, I'll tell you a quick story. The day after that guy tackled me at the meeting, the next day, I'm driving out of the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. I don't know if you know New York City, a 6-lane highway, and a guy cut me off. Rush hour traffic. This is 2.5 years off drink, no program. I chased after him in rush hour traffic. I jam him against the guardrail. I'm blocking 3 lanes of traffic. I go back to the car. I don't care who's in the car. I'm out of my mind. There's an Asian man sitting behind the wheel shaking. His wife's crying in the passenger seat, and his 3 children are crying in the back of the car. I apologized profusely at his window. I got back in my own car. I hit my head off the steering wheel. I said, I'm crazier off drink than I was on it. And in some respects, that's true. I never pulled a stunt, anything close to that when I was drinking. And here I am. And that's the truth. If you want to see real untreated alcoholism in me, don't watch me drinking. Watch me not drinking with no program. Then you will see alcoholism up close and personal. I got in the car full of disgust. I drove to my sponsor's house in name only. Sober a long time, but you can only help somebody who wants to be helped. You can bring a horse to water. You can make him thirsty, but you know how that analogy ends. He was sitting on his porch smoking a cigar, and I says, Jimmy, I got to talk to you. And I told him what I just told you. And he sat back on his porch, and he says, let me ask you this. How old were you when this happened? I says, Jimmy, this happened 20 minutes ago on the Gowanus Expressway. What do you mean, how old? Are we getting like lost in translation here? I got to get you hooked on phonics, the Shamrock version, bring you up to speed here. And he coined a phrase. Harry Tebow was a great friend of AA. Not an alcoholic, but understood alcoholism like few non-alcoholics do. And he coined a phrase, His Majesty the Baby. And that's what I was doing. My sponsor, he said to me, you're a child in a man's body. If you don't get in, I said, number one, I got news for you. They don't make cribs in your size. Number two, if you don't get into this program, you've been tiptoeing around this program, keeping everybody at arm's length with your one-liners, your glib phrases. If you don't get into this program, if you don't get free from the one guy you've never got free from, which is you, and live in the one place you've never lived, which is right here, right now, your life's going to go unlived in sobriety, and that's on you, my friend. And that's the truth. The 12 steps, it says in the big book, rocketed to the 4th dimension. If you'd have said to me in early sobriety, before I did this program, Paul, where's the 4th dimension? I would have said, well, see over the horizon there where the sun's coming through the clouds? It might be there, but it's certainly not here. And Einstein talked about the 3 dimensions of height, width, and space. And he says the 4th dimension is time. So what this program actually does, when I get rocketed to the 4th dimension, I get rocketed to a place I could never live. Right here, right now, present moment. I could never live here. Before the program, I'm in yesterday full of guilt. I'm in tomorrow full of fear. I'm a fearful person. And a fearful person will always find something to be afraid of. There's a boogeyman behind every tree. So this program, there's a guy, I know Scott's on here, there's a guy who used to say at a meeting we would go to, he would say, you know what time it is in the spiritual world? And we'd all go, what time is it? And he would say, now. It's now. It's always been now, and it always will be now. The whole universe, the whole of eternity is made up of a series of nows. And I couldn't live in the now. Now, because of this program, I get the opportunity to. Do I do it perfectly? Far from it. But I get the opportunity. I went through that program, those hefty bags full of garbage. Let them go. You know? Was able to come to terms with resentments that I've been carrying for years. I mean, it takes a lot. I mean, it shows in our book there about more about alcoholism. Here are some of the things, here are some of the methods we have tried, and all these cosmetic switching drinks. It takes a lot for a person to say, it took me, that my old way of doing business, my old raison d'etre was completely wrong. And not only was it completely wrong, but I got to accept 12 new ideas that are so radical. I mean, it takes a lot. The ego has to be smashed at a certain level before I let go of old ideas and accept 12 new ideas. But boy, am I glad I did it. Is it nice to do the steps and get a full knowledge of your condition? Absolutely. Find out who you are and who you're not. It's wonderful. But for what reason? You know, my life caught on fire in AA when I turned around and tried to take another man through these steps. That's when great events came to pass in my life. That's when my life took on new meaning. Our book says to watch a fellowship group around you. It's something you shouldn't miss. I'm seeing some of the guys on here. I go to a men's meeting regularly and see some of the guys on here. I mean, I love this program. I'm not going to sit here in the last few minutes and say I thought I'd come into AA and get sober, and especially when I worked the steps, that I'd walk between the raindrops. No, life goes on. I'm not going to sugarcoat it to you. If you're new here tonight, getting sober is probably the hardest thing you'll ever do in your life, except one other thing: drink yourself to death. And the roller coaster goes up and it goes down. Just don't get off. Stay on. Ride it out. And this program has allowed me to deal with situations. There's far worse things that have happened to me in sobriety than ever happened drinking. But I'm able to get through them today, one day at a time. I don't have to drink no matter what. I was a guy who had to drink no matter what. No matter what happened, you can be sure he's going to be drinking sooner or later. And all AA has ever asked me to do, as I said, was to stay sober and help another alcoholic achieve sobriety. And I think somewhere, someday, I'm going to be asked one question. And it's not going to be, hey, did you bring the Ferrari? It's going to be, what did you do with the gift that I give to you? Did you try to help any of my kids? And I hope I can give a good account of myself. That I'm a pretty selfish guy. The most selfish thing I could do would be to take the gift that he has given me and put it in my back pocket. There was somebody at the door for me. I got to be at the door for somebody else. And my life today, as I said, the promises of AA are not cash and prizes. They're the things of real value that I talked about. I'll tell you two stories in the last 5 minutes. I have two daughters. One is 18 and one is 4. One's going to college and one's going to pre-K. I know, the jokes write themselves, you know what I'm saying? Now, my oldest girl, about 6 months ago, they put on she loves the theater, and they've got a local theater here, and they did a performance of Legally Blonde. And she had the musical, and she had the lead role of Elle Woods. And they did 6 performances. And those 6 performances, I was sitting in the front row. Now, I'm not saying, look at me, Daddy of the Year. What I'm saying to you is, you put one drink in me, not 2 or 5 or 10. You put one drink in me. I'm not sitting in the front row. I'm sitting in some bar telling some guy I just met about my daughter who's in a show, but I ain't there. I'm a no-show. My record has proved that. And that's what I love about AA. I get the chance to show up in my life, and I get the chance to show up in your life. And I was there watching her hit the back wall every night and give her a bunch of flowers every night. These are the gifts of Alcoholics Anonymous. They talk about the gold. Clancy Emerson used to talk about the golden memories of AA. I'm telling you, AA has given me so many golden memories. I've lived long enough and I'm sober long enough. What's that old line? Life is lived forward, understood backwards. And I look back at my life and the memories. I mean, thank God AA is not a meritocracy by where your good deeds out there ensure how far you go in here. I mean, it's almost sad. Here's a guy like me. I burned my life to the ground. I lived a holy trinity of me, my whole life. And I get into Alcoholics Anonymous and I get given all these gifts. It doesn't seem fair in a way. But all God has asked me to do is to stay sober and help another alcoholic achieve sobriety. And the little one, she was 4 in January 9th, Dahlia. My oldest girl is Kristen. And she loves the Lion King. I was going to say we, but my wife got up and decorated the whole house like the Lion King. And she got up that morning and she was like, her eyes were like wide open. And she put her arms up and I lifted her up. And she whispered in my ear, Daddy, I want to be 4 forever. And my heart almost burst with joy. That was the feeling I was looking for in vodka. But it was bogus. It was counterfeit. It was phony. It wasn't the real deal. The real deal is in here with this program and this steps and this fellowship. Moments like that. I lay in a bed one time thinking I was checking out of here. Those are the moments you think about. The golden moments, the golden memories of Alcoholics Anonymous. Watching your daughter singing a show. Your little girl telling you she wants to be 4 forever. This is only because, and I realize today, this is only because I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm not here to sell AA, it sells itself, but I tell you, this life that I've been given in AA, and my life's far from perfect. I had an argument with my wife this morning. I had to make amends to my wife 10 minutes before this meeting started. I put my arms around her and kissed her and told her I loved her. So if you're looking at a guy with a perfect program, that'd be the guy next week. But like it says in our 10th step, I made amends quickly. I talked with another alcoholic and we move on. And I said I was sorry. That's just today. So thank God for this program. Thank God for this 10th step. Thank God my friend in Brooklyn said, if you're going to eat crow, eat it when it's fresh, not when it's been laying on the sidewalk for a couple of weeks. So I did that tonight. And we'll move on in Alcoholics Anonymous. I love AA. I love you guys. Phil, thanks so much. I'm going to end on this. The Irish blessing. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always in your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Thank you so much, guys.